Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, a scroll saw blade removal tool. Now some of you may be wondering out there, a scroll saw blade removal tool. Well, my scroll saw already comes with the tools necessary to remove the scroll saw blade. And if your tool or your scroll saw requires extra tools to remove the blade, then this video is not for you. However, if your scroll saw is one of the ones that uses thumb screws to hold your blade in place in the blade retainer brackets, then this video might be right up your alley. Let's head over to the scroll saw and we'll see what I'm talking about. Now this little guy right here, this is what I'm referring to, and this is the thumb screw that retains your blade in your blade retainer assembly right here. Now, don't get me wrong, these things are wonderful. I have them here on the Excalibur. I also had it on my DeWalt DW788, and it served me well over the years, no problems whatsoever. However, what happens is, as we get older, of course, we end up with problems with our hands, sometimes sore fingers, arthritis can set in, bursitis, any kind of ailment that makes it so that you can't necessarily grip these anymore. You can't nor necessarily torque them anymore, or untorque them for that matter. And it can be cumbersome and painful for a lot of scroll saw users to deal with these toolless blade retainers. So we're going to alleviate that today and make something that's going to help you and help those of you that have physical ailments that might prevent you from being able to use these. So the first thing we want to do is we want to remove one of these right out of the saw. So I'll just take the top one because it's easily accessible here, and we're going to take this over to the bench. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to measure the diameter of the threads on your blade retainer thumb screw. And in my case here, they're 15/64 of an inch in diameter. So we'll keep that dimension in our heads. And what we need to do is we need a little bit of stock. And in this case, I've got 2 pieces of scrap walnut. They're 1/2 inch thick, they're 1.25 inches wide each, and 3 inches long. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to mark the center point on one of our pieces. And right at that center mark, we will drill our 15/32 diameter hole, just like that. Now, the reason for this hole is that this knob is tapered. I don't know if you can see that. We have a smaller dimension on the top and the larger on the bottom, and we really need the larger dimension for this project. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the threaded section, place it down into our hole. We're going to line it up so that our knob sits on that center line, nicely centered there like that. And then we're going to trace around it to get that profile of the larger section of our thumb screw. Just like that. And once you get that traced, we're now going to take this over to the scroll saw. We're going to use this hole in the middle as our blade entry hole, and we're going to cut out as close to these lines as we can. So being 1/2 inch material, I'll just use a number 3 blade, and we'll tension it here. And like I said, we'll just cut this out as close to the lines as we can. And once you get that cut out, you just want to make sure that your thumb screw fits in this hole. If it does, you're golden. You can give this a little light sanding to take off any burring that the scroll saw may have created. And from there, we're going to take our second piece of 1/2 inch thick walnut, and we're going to line up all the edges and glue these two pieces together. Once you get them glued and you clean up all your squeeze out on the inside, we'll clamp these together and let them completely dry. Okay, so with all of the pieces, or both of the pieces, dried up, we're going to take a circle template and we're going to place on our center marks a 1 3/16 diameter circle. And then close to the ends on that center line, we are going to use our circle template and place a 3/4 inch diameter circle fairly close to the end of our stock. And we'll do this on both ends of our blank. At this point now, we can just take a ruler and we will join up between the outer edges of our 1 3/16 inch circle and our 3/4 inch circle. We will just put a joining line between those points on all of our circles. And at this point now, we can head back over to the scroll saw. Now with the lamination, this is now a 1 inch thick piece of walnut. It can be a tough cut on the scroll saw, so I have a brand new number 7 reverse tooth PGT blade installed here, and we're just going to cut around the perimeter of the shape that we've drawn. And at this point, you should have something that looks like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this a good sanding all over. We're going to take, starting at 150 grit, and start sanding around these corners here to break those hard edges and make them a lot softer, because we need to use this in our hands. So get it all sanded up, and then we need to head over to the drill press. So I've installed a 1/4 inch Forstner bit in the drill press. I've already drilled one of the holes just for testing. And we're going to drill along the same center line that we originally put our cutout on. We're going to drill a 1/4 inch diameter stopped hole about 1/8 of an inch deep. I'll show you why in just a second. So in each of those holes, I'm going to put 1 drop of CA glue. This is the Gorilla Glue CA gel. If you haven't tried it yet, it works really well for a lot of different projects. There we go. There's 1 drop in each hole, and I'm just going to glue in a 1/4 inch diameter rare earth magnet, and each one will actually protrude out beyond the wood. I don't want these to be flush. Give them a little tap. Make sure that they're seated in there. And there we go. We can now just let that CA glue cure. And with that, that is the project finished. So let's head over to the scroll saw and I'll show you what to do with this. Well, if you are someone that has issues using these thumb screws, then this can be a savior for you. I know that for me, sometimes they're really tight and I gotta really reef on them. And that's kind of my own fault. That's over torquing. That's the operator's issue. But if you have arthritis in your hand, these little knobs can be a nightmare. But this little cutout, this custom cutout, fits perfectly over top of the knob. Essentially, what it does is it enlarges this thumb screw. So now you're not using dexterity of your fingers, but instead your whole hand. And it doesn't take much to get that to release. And then again, as well, to give it a little torque, to have your blade perfectly in place and perfectly tensioned. Now, you can use it, whether you use it up here or you place it on the thumb screw below and that releases it, then that's up to you, whatever suits your fancy. But it's a great way if you have problems with your fingers and having to use these little thumb screws. This can really, really help you. And the rare earth magnets, when you're done, sit it right there. Click it to the arm of your saw. Click it to the underside of your table if you want, up under here, wherever is convenient for you to grab it and use it, wherever you like. Place it somewhere that is magnetic on your saw that makes it easily accessible for you to grab at a moment's notice and be able to either torque or untorque your retaining thumb screws on your scroll saw. So if you're having problems, don't give up scrolling. Find a workaround. And there you have it. A scroll saw blade removal tool. Guys, no matter what stage of the game you're at when it comes to woodworking, eventually, and I mean eventually, unless you are extremely lucky, at some point in time you end up with some kind of physical ailment that prevents you from either doing the craft or from enjoying it because you're in pain or you're uncomfortable. Now, it doesn't mean, and that's what this show is all about, it doesn't mean you have to give up the craft. It just means you have to work around it. Goodness knows I am not without physical problems. I have chronic back pain. I cannot stand for very long in the shop without getting extremely uncomfortable, especially at the workbench. And hence, that's why ages ago on the show, I made that adjustable stool. The only purpose for that stool, for me, was so that I could get it adjusted to a height that I wanted that would make me comfortable so I could sit at my bench and still continue to do what I love. And that's all that today's show is. For somebody that is giving up or considering giving up scrolling because honestly they just can't tighten that blade anymore, it hurts their fingers too much, it puts too much pain in their hands, this simple little solution can keep you scrolling. It can keep you going. It can alleviate the pain in your hands because it's a larger piece to be able to grip. You're now using your whole hand to turn that tension knob or to turn that retaining bolt instead of trying to use your fingertips. If that elongated, it's basically an extension of the knob. I just made the knob bigger, but if that shape doesn't work for you, maybe a large circular knob would work with the thumb screw imprint on the inside of it. If that helps you better to get a great big knob to turn and to be able to tighten it and continue your craft, then do it. There's always ways to work around something. And I hate to see that guys are just giving up on what they love to do, or girls, don't get me wrong. I hate to see anyone giving up on what they love to do because of physical pain or because they feel that they can't do it anymore because of their physical limitations. There's nothing that you can do, there's absolutely nothing that can stop you. You just sometimes have to come up with a workaround. And this thing here, simple as it is, if this keeps you scrolling and keeps you happy, gosh, man, it's 2 rare earth magnets and an inch thick piece of wood, 3 inches long and 1 1/4 inches. That alone is worth making one and continuing with your craft. Guys, there is one thing I want to point out with this. While this can help you if you're arthritic and can help you to get the adjustments of your tool assisting you in dexterity that you may have lost, what it also does is increases the torque on that bolt. So whereas before you may have given it like a tight twist, remember that this applies a lot more torque onto that thumb screw than what just your fingers would do. So ease up on the pressure there. Just give it a little torque. Try it. If your blade is slipping or if it's not holding correctly, then you know that you have to tighten it just a little more. Not much, just a little bit. And eventually you'll get the feel for it. Takes a bit of a learning curve, but you will get it. Stick with it. But you'd hate to over torque it and strip out that screw. So just remember that. The larger the knob, that screw is going to take a lot more torque. So ease back on your pressure. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click the bell and then you're not going to miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. It's a bit of a different one this week, guys. A bit of a shorter project, a much easier project, but honestly a totally valuable one. I hope that you've enjoyed the content. I hope that those of you out there that are having issues, if you're not going to try this one because this doesn't apply to you, I hope that this is going to get the gears going up in the old noodle and get you thinking of ways to help yourself to continue your craft. And more importantly, guys, I honestly hope that you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.